Now that we understand how the court system works, let's talk about how the court cases, specifically the written opinions from the court cases, can help us do our lawyerly work. Now, what we're doing this semester is learning how to do legal analysis for objective writing. Objective writing. Okay, we're not advocating for one side or another or representing any particular interest. So it's not like we have a plaintiff versus a defendant and we're advocating for one side. That's not what we're doing in objective writing. We just want to know objectively what the likely outcome is for any particular issue. Okay? We don't care which side wins or loses. We just want to be able to identify the issue. We want to discuss what the law is, or the rule. Then we want to know how that rule would apply to our situation. And finally, we want to discuss, we want to predict what the most likely result is. We want to give our conclusion. Okay? We want to be able to predict what the likely outcome is. And because we're trying to predict the outcome, we sometimes call objective writing predictive writing. Predictive writing. Okay, so how can past cases help us with this? Well, often the best way to predict how a court will rule on a particular issue is to see how courts in the same jurisdiction have dealt with similar issues and situations in the past. So if we have an issue that's going before a court and we want to predict what the court is likely to do with that issue, what the likely outcome is going to be, a good way to try to do that is to take a look at past cases, prior cases that have dealt with similar situations. All right? And then when we see what the outcome was in those past cases, that'll give us a clue about the likely outcome in our case. So let's take a look at an example of a case so we can see what the components of the case are. Now, the first thing that you'll notice when you look at a case typically is the caption, the title of the case. Okay, so right up here at the top, we have the case name. And this case is called Valiant Insurance Company versus Hamilton Funeral Service Centers. Okay, this is the case name. Now, underneath the case name, we have the docket number. The docket number is just the number that the court uses to keep track of all of its cases. And in case you want to know, here's the court. This particular opinion comes from the United States District Court for the Western District of Arkansas. And the opinion of this court for this case, the opinion was issued on April 10th, 1996. So this is the date of the opinion. Now notice that this is the date of the opinion. It's not the date that it was published. Okay, so this is different than, say, the copyright date of the publication. We're talking about the date of the actual opinion that came from the court. Underneath this caption information, we have some stuff that's provided by the publisher. Okay, this particular case I got from a case reporter. That's a publication by a publisher. This one happens to come from West. Now West published this, and the publishers at West decided to include some helpful information for you. And one of the things that the publishers included is this little paragraph here. This is what we call a syllabus. A syllabus is a summary of the case. It's not written by the judge. It's not written by the court that issued this opinion. It's provided to you by the publishers at West. They've given you a little summary of the case so you can read it very quickly and see what this case is about. Now, because it's not written by the judge, it's not part of the opinion itself, and it's not primary authority. It's not actually the law. Sometimes publishers make mistakes. They summarize incorrectly. So just keep that in mind when you read a syllabus. Now, underneath the syllabus, we have some other commentary that's provided by the publisher. You may notice this West key number again. All right, this is a reference to insurance 146.52 in the West key number system. If you want to know more about insurance, which presumably comes up in this case, right, you could look up this key number and read more about it. Underneath the key number is something called a headnote. A headnote. A headnote is, again, not written by the judge. It's not written by the court. It's provided to you by the publishers at West. And the publishers have given you a little blurb of the law. And this little this rule of law comes up in the case, or at least that's what the publisher thinks. And so the publisher has given you this little blurb of law so that you know at a quick glance that this is some law that comes up in this particular case. All right, we have another West key number, another headnote, and a lot of times cases will have lots and lots of headnotes. All right, here's the third one. After all of the headnotes, we'll typically find a section that includes information about the party's attorney. That's just for your information. And then finally, after the party's attorneys, we finally get to the actual law. Here is the opinion. Now we're dealing with the actual opinion that was written by the judge. This is the law. This is a primary authority. Right? Now this opinion continues on. So we're starting here on page 127 of the case reporter. It goes down to 128. It continues on. This particular case goes on until page 129. So it's 3 pages long, not too long. Right? Now remember that the headnotes are provided by the publisher. And they're numbered. Okay? Headnote 1, headnote 2. And what these numbers are referring to are places in the actual opinion that these headnotes refer to. Okay, so if we look down into the opinion itself, let's see, if we come down to page 129, you'll see that there are some numbers in brackets. Right here in brackets is the number 1. That means headnote 1 refers to right here. Headnote 1 is dealing with this paragraph. If you were to read this paragraph, the publisher is saying that that paragraph recites a piece of law, and that law is summarized in this headnote. Under Arkansas law, language within an insurance policy is to be construed in its plain, ordinary, and popular sense. Okay? Now, again, I can't emphasize this enough. This headnote is just language that's provided by the publisher. It's not the actual law. It's the publisher's summary of the law that presumably is given in the opinion in that paragraph. So let's see if that's actually true. An insurance policy is nothing more than a contract between the insurance carrier and its insured, and the ordinary rules of contract interpretation shall govern. The language within an insurance policy, let's scroll up a little bit, is to be construed in its plain, ordinary, and popular sense. So here, the publishers at West got that summary right. Right? So rather than having to go through and read the entire opinion and to find this little blurb and say, aha, here's the law I'm looking for, what the publishers are doing with the headnotes is just giving you, in a quick little nutshell at the beginning of the case, some blurbs of law that appear in the opinion itself. All right? So that's a quick little example of what a published case looks like. Now, I also have another copy of this same case for you. Right? That first example that I showed you, that was actually a scan from the physical book. Right? If you were to go into the library and look up the case reporter, it was actually a scan from that book. Now, a lot of times you're going to find cases online. All right? And if you do that, well, online we don't actually have pages, right? It just scrolls down one big document. So how do you know what page some of this information was on? Well, all the other stuff is the same. Okay, so it might be formatted differently, but you've got the case name here. Right, here's the court information. Here's the docket number, the date of the opinion. Okay, all of this information is the same. We even have this little syllabus provided to you. But because the page numbers aren't in here, right, we don't have the nice, neat little page numbers up at the top like we did for the scanned copy. The way you tell what page anything came on is by looking at these star numbers. This is called star pagination. And what this star 128 means is that this is the beginning of page 128 in the physical book. in the actual case reporter. All right. So what this is saying is that the first word on page 128 is it. The first phrase is it was allegedly discovered on that date. That's what appears at the very beginning of page 128. And the last two words on page 127 were malpractice litigation. So let's go up and look at the scanned copy from the physical book and see if that's actually true. Okay. Here's 128. The last words on 127 were malpractice litigation. And the first phrase on page 128 is it was allegedly discovered on that date. Okay, so that's how star pagination works. If you happen to look at a case that comes from an online reporter, right, you would look for these star numbers, and that would tell you what page some of this text came from. Right? And that's going to be very important for you when you do your citations.